Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So today, May and I will be answering some of your guys' questions about our adoption journey and what adoption is in general. So let's get into it. Okay, so question number one is how long is it and how do you know you're going to a good family? I think this question is more so about the process on adopting a child, and so there's a couple ways to answer this. It can take up to years, months, or sometimes weeks, debating on circumstances and situations of the child that is in the foster care. The process of becoming an adoptive family, there's some very hardcore checklists that you have to go through. There's tons of background checks, there's welfare checks, there's literally everything that you can think of for security and can you provide this child with a good life before you even can go see the adopted child you want. But there's tons and tons of loops and holes that you have to go through to even be confirmed to become an adopted parent. Yeah, and along with the adoptive parent part, there are many people in the process that try their hardest to link parents with child. So no matter what, there's going to be many questions about like, what are you looking for in a child? Are you looking for siblings? Do you just want a single child? Do you want a certain ethnicity? Do you age range? Like all those questions come into effect when you're trying to match parents with a child. Yeah. So it just all together is a long process. And I would like to emphasize here that most of the time the child being adopted, at least when they're younger, don't really have a choice on where they go or where they land. The next question is, how old were you when you found out that you were adopted? So this is a question we get asked a lot, very often. Gia and I have always known we were adopted. We always assumed that we were because we never looked like our parents. Our older sister and brother didn't look like us. And Gia and I, when we were in school, we were mostly around predominantly white people. So we were the minority. So we always knew something was different. So it wasn't really, when did you find out you're adopted? We've just always known we were adopted, and I think our family also has done well on telling us we were adopted. They didn't hide it. They tried to continue our culture as we grew up, which probably helped a lot. Yeah, I know for us growing up, we had books about adoption. A good book if you are looking for a book about adoption to talk to your kids about it is A Mother for Chaco, A Mother for Chaco, and I think there were a couple other ones I don't really remember, but A Mother for Chaco is a huge book that really just kind of pictured and explained what adoption was, more so on the lines of a mom doesn't have to look like you to be a mother. So that is something that I would recommend to anyone who is looking for a book about adoption to their young children or even just foster kids at the moment. I also think when May said, referring back to we have always known, we were a little bit older when we were adopted, so there was not a chance for us to not really know what was happening. Because we were about 3 when we were adopted and came to the US, so we had prior foster parents. We had a family in China, and so I remember just one day you're with these people that you've been with for a couple years, and then you're all of a sudden supposed to get on this plane and go with people you don't really know. And see, I think that's where Gia and I are different. I don't have really any memories of foster family and life before the US. If you ask me, like my very first memories of just living like a baby and a child growing up would be probably when I was like 5 or 6. So after a few years of actually being here. So overall, we were about 3 years old when we were adopted, so we were a little bit older and we always have known we were adopted.
Next question. I was also adopted. Are your birthdays actually your birthday? No, it's not actually our birthday. So the way that we found out our birthday was G and I were left on the street as babies, and whoever found us took us to the nearest, I want to say, orphanage, and from there they guessed on how old we were based on our height and our like head size.
Yeah.
The head size was to see who was older, which was G. I was always littler in every aspect, and you can kind of guess on what the child looks like when they come into the orphanage, if they've just been born, if it's been a few months, if it's been a few days. So they pretty much just estimated
Based off,
from the day we were found.
yeah, just based off physical features.
Yeah.
Because again, there was no note left, there was nothing really tying us to anything, so
There was no hospital records or anything.
yeah, there was nothing. And so as someone in the orphanage and as a doctor, they had to make those estimations, and you just kind of get told that. But like May said, our birthday is not exactly our birthday, it's a little bit off, as in maybe at least a week or so off. Not horribly off,
Yeah.
because it looked like we were a couple weeks old, but they just took the day that we were found and then counted backwards. And because we were born around December 30th, 31st, New Year's, we could have been in a whole different year, but that would have only been a day difference.
Day or two.
Yeah. So our birthday is January 2nd, but if you do the math and you figure it out, we could be either in the 1999 or 2000s, a little bit behind January 2nd.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so no, it's an estimation, but we have always celebrated on the 2nd.
Yeah. This next question is, how old were you when you were adopted? We kind of just already answered it, but G and I were about 3 when we came here to the U.S. for the very first time with our adopted family. And then before that, we were tossed around foster family to foster family, about 2 of them in China, until we were adopted.
Yeah. Do you like being adopted?
Honestly, that's kind of a tough question, just because I don't know anything different than being adopted. I never really lived a life outside of adoption and outside of the parents that I have now. So I really wouldn't know what life would look like or be like other than the life I'm living now.
We don't know another life outside of these family members and the life we have now, but I know, or I have a strong feeling / I want to hope that the life we have now is much better than what we would have had if we stayed in China.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think by being adopted, it's given us an amazing opportunity for a fresh start. I definitely don't think we would be in the place we are now if we stayed in China and grew up in China.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been able to get my education probably, and
For sure.
the activities that I love doing, I probably would have never been able to do, just because China is such a different country.
We just wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Like, simply put it, we wouldn't be here if we stayed in China.
Yeah. Last question. Have you heard of the term coming out of the fog, and how do you feel about it? No. Personally, I've not heard this term, but I want to think that this refers to like the fog as in like the confusion of being adopted, and then finally coming out to like, okay, yeah, I'm
Like
adopted, and accepting that
Yeah.
you're an adoptee that will have questions unanswered.
For myself, coming out of the fog, even though I've never heard of the term, I definitely think I've felt it and been through it. I think, if I'm correct, this phase of adoption comes through adolescence and growing and trying to learn about yourself, but it's pretty damn hard to learn about yourself when you don't know anything about yourself. You don't know where you came from, you don't have any bloodline to look to or ask questions, and during this phase you have so many questions that you want answered, but you will never get them answered, which for me was probably the toughest part about going through this fog.
I'm pretty similar to what May just said. It is really difficult when you're in your adolescent teen years because everybody is experiencing different things, but as you know, a girl in middle school and having all of her hormones go crazy, but also the confusion part and not knowing where you fit in, and it is worse because you don't know where you're from and you don't know your bloodline, you don't have a family tree to look at. Some activities in school, like doing a family tree, is really triggering because you get reminded that you don't have a family to look at other than your adoptive family, which is not blood related, which is not the same, but there are small things, like kids can say things that are triggering, and as a kid you don't know what triggers are, so you just feel really sad, you're confused, you're mad, you're angry at the world, you're angry at your adoptive parents because they don't have the answers that you want. And so that is probably like the most frustrating thing, but as time goes by, I think coming out of the fog is like understanding that like you won't know all of these things about yourself,
like maturing and realizing what adoption really means, accepting, like G just said, accepting the fact that your questions might never be answered. And I think it does come with growth and maturity. I know for myself growing up, if you told me that I could get past it and be okay with some of the things, I would laugh, because I remember I was pretty sensitive as a kid, especially towards adoption. I got angry, I got upset pretty quickly, I got triggered very easily. I also didn't know why. But now, looking back at it, I can definitely fully say adoption was most likely the reason that I was having such a hard time through adolescence.
Overall, I feel like every adoptee has to go through their own journey. So you can take these words as in like, yeah, I resonate with that, or oh, that never happened to me. But at some point, every adoptee has to come to the conclusion that there is not going to be questions that you want answered. And that is something that as an adult, as a child, it's going to take time to understand. I'm still trying to understand that because it is hard sometimes. If I had advice for adoptive parents, I would say if your kid is lashing out or just has a lot of emotions, it's probably because they don't know how to explain what they're feeling, but I feel like that's very common in just young kids. They don't know how to explain how they're feeling. So therapy would be great. Someone who specializes in adoption. That's the one thing I wish we did, because a child who went through a traumatic experience such as moving homes or moving countries, learning new languages, it is traumatic for them.
And it's not just one traumatic moment. Adoption is complex trauma, so it hits every single part of your life. It doesn't matter what stage you're in or what you're going through, it will touch probably every single part of your life.
Those were a few of the common questions that everyone had about our adoption story. If you guys want to hear more about our story or have questions about just being adoptees in general, let us know in the comments if you guys want a part 2 to this Q&A. I know we have a huge adoption family here on YouTube, but also on our other social medias. So just let us know and we would be happy to sit down and have more of these Q&As. I think May and I like doing these more. because it makes us feel like we can talk to you guys more one-on-one type of way.
And you guys get to know us more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that is the end of this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And like always,
Be kind to others and happy yourselves, and we'll see you in the next video.
Bye.